not going to say that. So the Russian economy could not come back for another 10, 20, 30 years, if ever. Okay. What economy wants to risk that? What economy would want to risk that via war? And if China is thinking, you know what, we're sitting on the sidelines for this, as they are, to see what happens. Because if Putin is successful in taking over the Ukraine and everybody else just lets it happen, we'll just take Taiwan. But Russia's been isolated from the world. Their economy has been devastated. And the Russian people aren't like they used to be before. They're not the people who will go ahead and live on beets and vodka for motherland Russia. No, because they want McDonald's hamburgers and Starbucks coffee and Lay's potato chips and Pepsi-Cola, Louis Vuitton purses, Mercedes-Benz automobiles. They want all that stuff. They're not going to drive broken down Ladas and live on vodka and beets anymore. They're not that way. Vladimir Putin's rule is coming to an end. And I believe sooner rather than later, because he's been an abysmal failure. And he's been an abysmal failure because his attempt to take over a democratically elected government has caused the implosion of his economy and true hardship for all Russians. Being a glass half full person, I've got to ask myself the question, has the worm turned? Have things truly changed for the better now? Only time will tell. Last but not least, I wanted to give you a quick Jaguar update. The Jaguar 1951 Jaguar Mark 7 that we're restoring. Haven't done a ton on the Jaguar. I've done about as much on the Jaguar as I have on the podcast lately because things are busy. I will tell you the car has been painted. I talked to the guy yesterday. He swears to Almighty God that the engine is going this week to the rebuilders. We'll see. We're still actively looking for the proper paint chip. Apparently, Twilight Blue, as sprayed by Jaguar in 1951, nobody has a true formula for that. And by a true formula, I mean you just can't say midnight blue, close enough. This isn't the spare bedroom, okay? Once you find a chip that matches this, you have to find a paint manufacturer that manufactures a paint that matched that old chip, okay? So you can say, yes, DuPont makes paint ABC 123 that is an exact match to midnight blue, and that paint is available to people in North America. So the guys are looking long and hard internationally to find the right paint match. And when they do, the car will be sprayed, the engine will be put in, it comes back to me, and then the real work starts. So hopefully, I'm still working on that dopey drive shaft, propeller shaft as the Brits call it. Hopefully I'll get just a little bit more done on that today after the podcast. Okay, the topic of today's essay, the Jim Croce you never knew. Wow, Jim Croce, where did you pick him out, Strong? Well, this last week, I guess it was last week, week before last, I was in North Carolina for the week, a Monday through Friday trip. And I rent my cars from Enterprise. I like the way they work. They're a St. Louis company. They're not only at airports, but they're other places. So they're an easy company to work with. I like the way they do business. Enterprise leasing, Enterprise rental car, good company. I like to use them. But you don't get Sirius XM radio with them unless you pay for it. Sorry, I'm not paying $10 a day to listen to the radio, so I never get it. However, sometimes the guy before me had it, and they forget to switch it off. So I get Sirius XM radio. This was the case, which is good because in North Carolina, there's not a whole lot of music that I care for. Let's just say that. I'm not a country fan. I'm not a hip-hop fan, but that's about the only music you get. And as far as talk radio goes, the only thing you get is the Ride of Rush Limbaugh stuff and NASCAR. That's all the talk radio is about in North Carolina. So luckily I had Sirius XM and I could go back and forth to the various oldie stations. And I heard several songs I hadn't heard for quite some time by Jim Croce. And I remembered, because I was in high school when he died in 1973, a freshman in high school when he died. And I just remember thinking, wow, Jim Croce died. He was kind of a popular guy. But then throughout 73, 74, 75, his music became very popular posthumously. Now, I guess, what would you call Jim Croce? An American folk rock singer, songwriter, both really. And in fact, he was active between 1966 and 1973. He did release 5 studio albums and numerous singles. Now, during that period, Croce took a series of odd jobs to pay the bills because music wasn't doing it, while he continued to write, record, and perform concerts. And he formed a partnership with a songwriter and guitarist, Murray Meulenson. And I knew I was going to mispronounce this guy's name, Meulenson. And his fortunes turned in the early 1970s. He went from making no money to making some money. And in fact, his breakthrough came in 1972, his third album called You Don't Mess Around with Jim. That produced 3 charting singles. The title, Time in a Bottle, which reached number 1 after he died, and other songs. In fact, the follow-up album, The Life and Times, included Bad Bad Leroy Brown, which was the only number 1 hit he had during his lifetime. Now, September 20th, 1973, at the height of his popularity, and the day before the lead single to his 5th album, I Got a Name, was released, the day before, Jim Croce and 5 others died in a plane crash. Now, his music continued to chart throughout the 70s following his death. Croce's wife, Ingrid, was his early songwriting partner, and she continued to write and record after his death. Their son, A.J. Croce, also became a singer-songwriter in the 1990s. Croce was born in 1943 in South Philly. His family later moved to Upper Darby, the suburbs, and he attended Upper Darby High School. He graduated in 1960, studied at Malvern Preparatory School for a year, and then he enrolled in Villanova University, where he majored in psychology, minored in German. So the guy had a college degree. He received a Bachelor of Science in Social Studies in 1965. He was a member of the Villanova Singers and the Villanova Spires. When the Spires performed off campus or made recordings, they were known as the Coventry Lads. Croce was also a student disc jockey at radio station WKVU, which is now WXVU. Villanova University is the VU. Early in his career, he really didn't take music seriously until he started studying at Villanova, where he formed bands and performed at fraternity parties, coffee houses, universities, etc., playing anything that people really wanted to hear. Blues, rocks, a cappella, railroad music, anything. That's according to a interview with Croce. Croce's band was chosen for a foreign exchange tour of Africa, the Middle East, and Yugoslavia. He later said, and I quote, "We just ate what the people ate, lived in the woods, and played our songs. Of course, they didn't speak English over there, but if you mean what you're singing, people understand." I guess that's true. Now, on November 29th, 1963, Croce met his future wife, Ingrid Jacobson, at the Philadelphia Convention Hall during a hootenanny, where he was judging a contest. Now, Croce released his first album called Facets back in 1966, with 500 copies pressed. Now, how did he get the money? Well, he got $500 as a wedding gift from his parents. His parents gave him this money. He said, here's your wedding gift, $500, with the condition that you must use this money to make your album, to publish your album. Now, they did this because they thought, okay, we're going to give him the money. He's going to publish his album. It's going to crash. He's going to understand that he can't make money at this stupid singing stuff. He'll use his college degree to make a living at a reputable profession. However, the album was successful. Every single copy sold. So mom and dad's trick did not work. Croce married Ingrid Jacobson in 1966. He then converted to Judaism because his wife was Jewish. He and Ingrid were married in a traditional Jewish ceremony. So Croce was not Jewish. He was actually Sicilian, but converted to Judaism after he married his wife. He enlisted in the Army National Guard in New Jersey because he didn't want to be drafted and deployed to Vietnam, and he served on active duty for 4 months before leaving duty a week after his honeymoon. Croce, who was not good at authority, had to go through basic training twice. Now, from the mid-1960s through into the early 1970s, Croce performed with his wife as a duo. At first, their performances included songs by different artists like Ian and Sylvia, Gordon Lightfoot, Joan Baez, Arlo Guthrie. Say that name 3 times. But in time, they started writing their own music instead of doing covers. Now, during this time, Croce got his first long-term gig, a suburban bar and steakhouse in Lima, Pennsylvania, called the Riddle Paddock. His set list covered different genres, including blues, country, rock and roll, and folk. In 1968, the Croces were encouraged by record producer Tommy West to move to New York City. They spent time in the Kingsbridge section of the Bronx and recorded their first album with Capitol Records. Now, during the next 2 years, they drove more than 300,000 miles, playing small clubs, concerts, college tours, promoting their album called Jim and Ingrid Croce. Now, they then became disillusioned with the music business in New York City. They sold everything they had except for one guitar to pay the rent. They returned to Pennsylvania, and they started living on a farm near Liddell, Pennsylvania, where Croce played for $25 a night, which really wasn't enough money to live on. So Croce was forced to take odd jobs such as driving trucks, construction work, and teaching guitar to pay the bills while continuing to write songs, often about characters he would meet at local bars and truck stops, and he would write about their work experiences and his. In fact, these experiences provided the material for songs like The Big Wheel and Working at the Car Wash Blues. So he took that life information and converted it into song. The Croces then returned to Philadelphia, and Croce decided to be serious about becoming a productive member of society. He said, look, I had worked on construction crews. I'd been a welder while I was in college, but I'd rather do other things than get burned. Welders get burned. His determination to be serious led to a job at a Philadelphia R&B radio station called WHAT, What, where he translated commercials into soul. In fact, one of his tagline was, Croce said he would sell airtime to, for instance, Broncos pool room, and then he'd write the spot. Hey, you want to be cool and you want to play pool? Dig it. That kind of thing. So he worked for the radio station. He wrote copy for the commercials, for the spots. So he was actually making a living in the business, but not singing and recording. He was doing okay. In 1970, Croce met a casually trained pianist, guitarist, and songwriter, Maury Mullinson, from Trenton, New Jersey. That was through his producer. Now, the producer, Joel Salviotto, and Croce had been friends when they studied at Villanova University. And the producer met Mullinson when he was teaching at Glassboro State College in New Jersey. The producer brought Croce and Mullinson together at the production office of Tommy West and Terry Cashman. Remember that name, Terry Cashman. That was in New York City. Croce at first backed Mullinson on guitars, but gradually their roles reversed and Mullinson added the lead guitar to Croce's music. Now, I said remember that name, Terry Cashman. Does it sound familiar? Terry Cashman was a record producer, primarily. And he sang a song or two here and there. Never really made much of a splash in the music business. But then he recorded one song, just one song, that really never made the charts, but became very popular. And he took that one song and changed it 28 different times. That song that Terry Cashman wrote and sang, Talkin' Baseball. Yeah, that one. And he did the Talkin' Baseball song, Terry Cashman did, and then did a similar version for every major league ball team. And the ball players or the ball teams paid him for the music. So while the song was never a hit, he did